from New York, and he's an expert in the sector. Pablo, thanks for joining us. Let's begin with the legal setup in the United States. The product, cannabis, is legal in some U.S. states, but not at the federal level. And what is your reading of that federal question? Is there any momentum towards federal legalization in the U.S. with a new administration now on its way to Washington?
Right. So on that point, we are talking about a $32 billion industry in the U.S. About 24 states have legalized cannabis for adult use, close to 40 for medical use. So you could say it's a very thriving industry in the states where it operates. As you said, it's not legal at the federal level, and that imposes a number of restrictions in the sector. It limits the capital flows into the sector. It doesn't allow the plant-touching companies in the U.S. to be listed in NASDAQ or NYSE. So it creates it also, because it's a Schedule I drug, according to the Controlled Substances Act, all these companies have to pay income tax based on their gross profits per 280E rule. So yes, at the state level, a thriving industry, but a number of challenges because it's not legal at the federal level. All that said, there are expectations that the new administration will take a more positive stance on cannabis, partly based on tweets by the incoming president before the election. For example, they may want to complete the rescheduling process that the Biden administration began, moving cannabis to Schedule III from 1. Let's see how that plays out, but that's a possibility. There's also people in his inner team, like Kennedy Jr., Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, which are supposed to be in favor of cannabis. So in my opinion, we may get rescheduling, may or may not, right, according to the current administrative process as going through the various steps, including an ALJ hearing right now. We think that process will drag on until June, maybe the second half. Again, it may or may not succeed. Then the inner team, the Trump team will have to decide what do they want to do. If they are not able to succeed with rescheduling, do they want to deschedule and federally legalize cannabis? Again, we realize that the GOP as a majority is probably, more prohibitionist than necessarily wanting federal legalization. But we think that there are people very close to Trump, and again, based on his tweets, that may want to take a more positive stance. Again, it could be rescheduling, it could be descheduling, could be banking reform, could be a number of things. Okay. But I think, Annette, to cut it there short, I would say that there's reasons to be somewhat optimistic about what may happen with the new administration. The stocks are not reflecting that in no way, but we think there lies in an opportunity if you choose selectively. Okay,
you wrote a lengthy report only a couple of days ago. It was dated the 16th of December, and it's headlined U.S. MSOs, is a pivot coming? And what MSO stands for is multi-state operators. And I guess that is an acknowledgement of the fact that some of these companies can operate in different states, but they cannot operate across the entire country. What do you mean by a potential pivot coming from some of those multi-state operators, and who are they?
Right. So what we mean by that, well, some of the largest MSOs are Curaleaf, Green Thumb, Cresco Labs. What we mean by a pivot is that if we continue in this current landscape of no major changes at the federal level, what do these companies do? What they've been doing in the short term, of course, is cutting costs, improving cash flow, improving their balance sheets, refinancing debt. It's a basic thing they have to do. But by pivot, we mean, can they look at other things, become more aggressive on the international front? Curaleaf has made investments in Germany. 10% of our sales come from international. We think there's opportunity there. The German market looks very exciting. Another thing they could do, depending on the new farm bill and how rules change for hemp derivatives, they could begin to invest in hemp derivatives of the intoxicating kind. We've seen some companies like Curaleaf again, Wana, and others make moves in that regard. They may also look at transformative deals in terms of M&A within the group or buying assets here and there. For example, today a smaller company called Vireo Growth announced a transformative deal buying assets in 4 states. That stock is up 90% today. So by pivot, we mean, for example, again, M&A. They could buy brands. So there's a number of things they can do in this time of uncertainty at least the leading ones, and that way, in my opinion, put themselves in a stronger position strategically for the future. The other thing we'll add in that report, the argument we made, is that besides pivoting, they can also, what I call, push the envelope, right? See what the regulators will accept. Some companies are taking a more aggressive stance regarding the 280E rule, provisioning for income taxes as normal corporations. Could they, try to acquire NASDAQ-listed vehicles and use that as a backdoor listing? Or could they themselves begin to set up their own guardrails to allow strategic investors of the corporate kind, whether CPG, pharma, or Canadian large companies, to invest in them? We've seen Canopy Growth make acquisitions in the U.S., SNDL, it's equitizing some debt that they own in the U.S., and they set up structures that are compliant with NASDAQ that will allow them to own U.S. assets. So that's what we mean by pivot. But if I step back for 1 second, and I know it's a lengthy answer, I want to just say that there's a lot of positive things going in the industry, and it's not just about the U.S., although we acknowledge that what's happening in the U.S. Pretty much drives sentiment globally for all these stocks. But for example, Canadian exports were up 80% in the third quarter, and that growth was driven by Germany, the Czech Republic, Australia. German imports themselves in the third quarter were up about 2.5 times year on year. And we think that market will grow 5-10 times. There's a number of Canadian companies that exports to Germany and to Europe, and we think they are going to benefit. And then you have in the US some states that could go legal. For example, Pennsylvania, Ohio just went rec. So you have all those things that are happening globally that are favorable to the industry and all these regulatory changes. But of course, if you look at the share prices, stocks are depressed, investors pessimistic. We think that therein lies an opportunity, but my only message to investors is be very selective, do your homework, and take a long-term view. This is a very fast-moving sector.
Thank you very much. We will leave it there. Pablo Zuanic, managing partner at Zuanic and Associates on the U.S. cannabis market.